Hey, welcome back to the Client Spotlight. This is Steve Ciprani here. I am with two amazing former clients, actually current and former clients. I am with Tanya Salseth and Tiffany Peck, and both very talented business women, and excited just to kind of ask them some questions. So Tanya, we are going to start with you. I know you've gone through our process quite a few times, and you're one of our favorites that we get to work with. But I wanted to just ask you, I know you've hired a little bit on your own, and you've definitely gone through our process. Why did you decide to go through our process when we hired Tiffany? Tiffany's been with us about 2 years, right?
So I'll just start by saying, like most entrepreneurial people, I think I can do everything myself until I actually try to do it and figure out that I'm really not very good at certain things. And I actually don't like doing certain things. And like a lot of entrepreneurial people, I'm not very patient when it comes to hiring. And hiring is a process where you do need to take your time to find the right fit. And I would just interview people and they seem fine. And I'm like, yeah, bring them forward. And there was no real process or thought behind it, or really any sort of, kind of obvious red flags that I was looking for. And again, I don't really have a background in human resources. So I think when I've tried to hire on my own, it just ends up being very like out of desperation. You get to a point where you're like, I really need someone so badly. And you seem fine. You just go sit there and I'll just tell you what to do. And that has really not worked on a number of levels multiple times. And so, I don't even remember where I heard about Ciprani initially, but I was like, oh, it's a specialty firm that hires specifically for people in real estate. They get it. They know what we're looking for. I said, I'll try it. So that's sort of, I think, the initial impetus that kind of led me to Ciprani Consulting.
Yeah. And since then, you're someone we just love to work with. And so, Tiffany, I'd love to just ask you, and as I mentioned, you've been now in the role for about 2 years. You're the general manager, so you do lots of different things. But I wanted to just ask you, what was it like going through our process a couple of years ago? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, initially, I was a little surprised at the number of steps.
Yeah.
Yes, because for lots of people, they hire by, 1-2 interviews. All you got to prove is that you don't suck for a total of like an hour, right? And people are like, okay, sure, let's give it a try. So while it was a little bit surprising initially, I actually, by the end, I was kind of excited and happy that I had gotten to have a little bit more of a serious process and get to know Tanya a little bit more before we finally decided that this was going to be a working relationship. Especially because I was having to relocate to another city and move, and it's always difficult when you put that risk out there and without knowing for sure that it's really going to play out. So
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the process can run a little longer than a typical, I like this person, let's hire them. We always like to say we want the candidate that wants the job, not just any job, right? Yeah. And so you definitely proved that. We were very impressed with you as we went through that. Tanya, back to you. I would love to ask you, so first time, we'll go back in time a little bit here, right? Because we're working together on another hire as your business has grown. But I want you to tell me one thing you're really excited about as we kind of started, and one thing maybe that you were a little bit afraid of or you're anxious about.
Ooh, I think excited. I was really excited to have some help, because I think a lot of people, they wait to the point where they're just overloaded and dying. And you're like, please, somebody come and help me because I have so much work to do because the business is growing, And so I was very excited for someone to come in and help take that weight off my shoulders. At the same time, I was very fearful because when I first came to Ciprani, I had never hired anybody on my own.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted my hand held because I said, I don't know anything about this stuff. Because there's like all kinds of regulations. And what if you say the wrong thing? And what if you get the wrong person? And it can be very expensive. And especially when you're a small business, a hire is a major, major expense for a small business.
Right.
And so you're naturally fearful of making the wrong decision. And so I think the process itself, because it is more lengthy, because it is really more in depth beyond just like a skill set, right? It's really our personality is going to mesh, our kind of value system is going to mesh, our culture is going to mesh, right? I think the Ciprani process is more geared towards that. And ultimately, I think if you explore those areas first, you end up making a better match, right? Because then you don't just get the person that's like, I need a job. Yeah, you look good. Fine. You're going to pay me what I want to find. Because I think when you do it that way, you set yourself up for kind of like, oh, well, if it's not the salary I want immediately, well, then maybe I'm just going to leave, right? And you've spent so much time and energy and resources and expense on hiring somebody. So I think, yeah, excitement for somebody new that could come help me, but a lot of fear where I'm going to spend a lot of money and then maybe the person's going to leave and I didn't get anything and they weren't the right fit.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I always share with our clients, it takes about 100 hours to find the right person. Anybody can just pull a resume and hire someone, right? People need jobs, we know that. But our goal is always to save you like 80% of that time. So we follow that 80-20 rule to get you back in what you're doing, right? Growing your business and doing sales and all a million things that we all have to do when we run businesses, right? So.
Yes. And I will say as a salesperson, we like to think that, we're really good at like reading people and talking to people. And I think for the hiring process specifically, one of the things I really appreciated about my recruiter was we would go through an interview and I'd be super excited about a candidate. And she would very subtly be like, did you see what she said about this question when we asked? And she would pick at little things that didn't quite sit well with her that I hadn't even noticed. Right. Because I'm like, yeah, this person's great. Look at the skill set. Let's go. And she'd be like, there were some red flags that I saw. Did you see this? And I'm like, no, now that you mentioned it, yeah, I guess that's not great. And so we were able to eliminate candidates that at first blush seemed great. But then when we really started to dig into it, we could see, yeah, this person's not going to be very happy in this job. Or they're coming in with a certain set of expectations that really doesn't match the reality, right? And I think my recruiter was really good at picking up on that and actually sending me candidates that were not only skilled, but that actually their motivation level and what they were interested in matched the job, right? Which is kind of important.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, there's little tells, and how you do the little things will always add up to be the big things, right? And we always expect people to show up well in an interview process, but someone showing up on day one, or we're in day like 750 now with what Tiffany's doing. There's a lot of difference there to really be growing and building that relationship. So I love what you said about that. That's awesome. So Tiffany, I would like to ask you as well, what made you choose Tanya? How did you know, like most candidates are interviewing at other places, right? And there is an interview part of, I always tell our clients, like, hey, you're still being interviewed too. Don't forget that they might have other jobs or they might not want your job. What made you excited about working in her company?
Well, partially was the work I was going to be doing and the setup. I was looking for a place where I could have a larger impact, and where I could be, ideally in a more smaller business type of space. So that worked out really well. And the work itself was really interesting. But actually a lot of it was really her, our first or meeting in person. So I got a chance to just, I guess, really interact and see, like, she was a real person. She seemed really nice. And then when she had some technological issues with her computer, and I basically stuck my nose in it and solved the problem, and she wasn't like put off by that. Actually was kind of when I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be fine. Like, she's not thinking I'm a total weirdo for in the middle of an interview deciding to solve her computer issues. So
and Steve, you have to imagine this. So like, I'm this like little small business working out of the basement of my house, and my computer died right when I was showing Tiffany something that, because at this point we're just sort of still getting to know each other, and my computer completely died. She crawled under my desk to fix the problem, and I was like, I love this woman. She is a doer. Like, she did not even think twice about, like, it wasn't her house, it wasn't her job. She was like, there's a problem, I need to fix it. I'm like, that is the kind of initiative I'm looking for. And so it was just sort of like, I don't want to say love at first sight, but Tiffany, it was love at first sight for me.
Right. That does lead me to a follow-up question I had for Tiffany. We spent a little bit of time talking about small business. I know, because we hire 300-400 people a year. Not everybody gets that, especially on the employee side. There's not always that empathy for what the challenges of what small business ownership is like. But there's also not sometimes an awareness of the opportunity. But we were chatting about that a little bit before. I'd love to just have you share, why do you love small business? What is it that's exciting about that for you that makes this relationship work so well?
Yeah. So I really like that in a small business, you kind of have to be able to do a bunch of things. You wear a lot of hats, and you have to know a little bit about how to fix part A and part B and a little bit of part C as well. And that means that when I come to work, I never really know exactly what's going to happen. There's always a potential for something different and something new. So even though like I'm gearing up to do owner distributions for the 812th time, like there's still things that are also going on the day that can be unique and different. And it really allows for me to feel like I have a bigger impact in what's happening. I'm not just one cog in a larger system that is easily just replaceable and put in, and no big deal if I don't show up to work.
Right.
And I appreciate that, and I like that, because frankly, I could work at a place where I could make more money, and I could have, fancier, I work in this big fancy corporate, or I do all these things or whatever, but that wasn't what I was really looking for, And this was one of the things actually that Sam, the recruiter that we worked with, was really good at like being able to see and clarify like that this was why Tanya and I were a good fit, was because she couldn't offer me a bajillion dollars, but she could offer me a job where I felt like I was doing something meaningful while also being appreciated for that.
Yeah.
And that was worth it to me at this point in my career to make that shift. So
yeah, no, I love that. And what you described there, I would call, is something we look for. You described growth mindset. You don't look at challenges as, oh, I don't want to do that. You look at them as opportunities. And we know in small business, anytime you create a bigger world together, there are more opportunities for everyone. And that's one of the exciting parts about small business for sure. So I wanted to just ask you guys, because I know that you're both growing and we're doing a hire right now, which is exciting. But Tanya, what's next for you guys? What are you guys excited about? So she's running the show, it sounds like. She's kind of doing that integrator role in some ways for you.
Completely.
What's next in your relationship? What are you guys excited about, and what are you working on?
I think we're at the period where we're not like truly a startup, right? Like we've got some systems in place. We've got some great employees now. I mean, Tiffany manages 3 full-time staff and 2 part-time staff. And on the sales side, we've got 4 agents. So, because we have the sales pit and the property management piece. And I think where we're at right now is really sort of making everything nice and polished, so that, because our goal is not to be the biggest, hugest thing ever. It's really to like have a good connection with people and offer a service where we enjoy what we're doing, right? Because when you get so big that it's just volume, I mean, I guess you could make a lot of money that way, but it loses some of the soul, right? And I think part of what is nice about a small business is it's personal. Like Tiffany and I have lots of chats that have nothing to do with work, like I ask her about her dogs and, talking about like her family. And so it's much more personal than just a very corporate environment where you're coming in and it's expected to do X, Y, and Z, and then you leave and it's all about money. And not that money's not important, right? But I think there's something beyond that where with small business, Tiffany mentioned impact several times, like you can have that personal impact. We've helped some people with some very difficult problems. Tiffany has been really amazing at like leading some of our owners on the property management side away from ruin and towards better things. And sometimes it's not always glamorous and it's not always fun, and people don't appreciate it until later. And they're like, actually, that was kind of awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I think for us, what's next is really sort of solidifying where we're at and then seeing organically where we go from there. And part of that is, continuing to give Ciprani a call, because you guys know how to do it and I really don't. And I am happy to farm it over to somebody who's an expert that can do it a lot better than I can.
So, well, it's nothing but a joy and a pleasure to work with you. And then Tanya, I think actually you guys could both answer this one, but Tanya, I'd love to ask you just last question here. What's one piece of advice you would give to people that are looking? What's something I know you've learned and you've grown, you have a great brand and that matters a lot to you, is what I heard you saying there. But what's one piece of advice you might give to another entrepreneur or colleague that would make their business better as they kind of think about hiring?
Honestly, trust the process and let you guys do what you do best, right? I mean, a lot of us are real estate agents, and as real estate agents, we always have that client that comes in and is like trying to tell us what to do, and we're like, dude, we do this every day.
Right.
And so we know what we're talking about when we give you advice. And so, just trust the process and go through the process and communicate well with the person that you're working with. And I think you'll get great results, because even now we're in the process of hiring somebody, and each interview we're kind of like, maybe we should tweak this. Maybe we need this. Maybe we should filter this a little bit more. I'm not getting quite this. Maybe I should bump the salary up. And so Maggie and I are working together to really kind of hone in, okay, we're really kind of not getting the candidates. Maybe at this price point, maybe we gotta bump it up. Maybe we need, to add this level of skill or whatever. But I think that, the great thing is Ciprani is there for that. You're open to feedback. And I think what I've always found in the multiple times that I've worked with the company is you guys are very invested in the result. Like, you want a good quality result.
Yes.
And I have had the recruiters tell me, are you sure it's a little, we really want to make sure that you interview enough people so that you really feel like you have the right one out of the gate. Because, it's been the case that I get very excited about something. I'm like, this person, and they're like, please interview some more. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to spend the extra time to make sure that we get a quality result.
I love that. Yeah. And I mean, that's very wise. And that's something that you bring to the process too. Like, we can only be as good as the leader that we're working with. And that's why it's always just been a true pleasure to work with you. Last question for you, Tiffany. People are looking for jobs, and that matters too. What's one piece of advice you might give a job seeker or someone getting into small business, maybe from a different background, that would help them succeed?
Well, I think that the thing that this process told me is that owners and who are willing to take the time to really get to know you and spend time on this process will demonstrate that willing to invest in things that matter, will demonstrate that in their business, will demonstrate that as a supervisor, will demonstrate that as an ethical business owner, right? And that wasn't initially, that's not obvious. I mean, we live in Amazon world, right? Where everything gets immediate gratification, and where you can apply to 47 jobs in 33 minutes on Indeed, right?
Right.
So,
people do.
Yeah, people do, right? So then when they call and they're like, hey, there's a 7-part process to this, and in order to potentially get this job, you're like, do I really want to go through the process? And the answer is yes. The answer is absolutely yes. Being able to go through and make sure that by the time that both of you are saying yes to this relationship, you're both sure about it, as opposed to I just need a job, has made all the difference.
I love that. And that's so interesting to hear also from your side of it, as someone that, it's not convenient, but what you're really doing is you're making sure the relationship will work with both parties. And that is what you get to learn, I think, through that process. That you said that so well. So thank you both so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and Tiffany, and see you again. And Tanya, as always, a pleasure to see you. So thank you both so much.
Likewise.